everybody, and welcome. It is Wednesday, and we are live for an amazing episode of The View from the Top. I see people are coming in from all over the world. Hi there to Mena, hi to Annabelle from Austin. People are coming in. I see Radhika is coming from India, Francois from Kuala Lumpur. Gosh, it must be late in Kuala Lumpur. John Lee from Portugal, welcome. People all over the world. We've got an amazing show. We've got an amazing audience for you today. The numbers are just going wild. But what a show we've got for you today. But what a week we've had. Oh my God. I mean, you know, I'm based here in the UK. What a week we've had. We've had sadly the death of our monarch, the Queen. We've had the accession of the new king. We've had a change of prime minister. I tell you, I've got milk in my fridge that has seen two monarchs, two prime ministers, and indeed two Chelsea managers. I mean, I just can't keep up with the pace of change that's going on. Very, very sad times here. We've also had some very exciting news from a Benevo perspective. We just announced, in fact, a few hours ago, that we've raised a funding round of $12 million to further the Benevo expansion. I know we're going to be saying more about that later, and we're going to be talking about that more next week too. But today, we are focusing on the EoR revolution, the employer of record revolution. I'm delighted to say that we've got guests from Deel, which amazingly, Deel is the fastest growing company ever fastest growing software company ever in history. And we'll be talking a lot about Deel and what's been going on there with them, how they're managing it, and indeed how EoRs are working. So it's going to be a great show, and I know you're all going to enjoy it. If you want to take part in the conversation, join in the conversation, write in the comments box, tell us what's going on in your life, where you are in the world, say hello. It's the only way that we know who's here. It's the only way that other people in the audience know who else is in the audience. And indeed, as we get into the EoR discussion, then, you know, do feel free to ask questions of our representatives from Deel. We have Casey Bailey, who's the head of people at Deel, and we've got Steve Malley and Steve Hoffman from the Strategic Partnerships Group. So it's a great show that we've got for you in a moment. Next week, we're going to be talking about the global mobility gold rush, because there is a wall of money coming into our industry, and it is quite targeted. You know, some companies are struggling at the moment, but other companies are getting significant investment. We've seen it with Deel, we've seen it with Fialto, we've seen it with what's EY's planning at the moment. And of course, as I've announced just a few moments ago, we're seeing it with Benevo, that private equity is really beginning to believe in global mobility and is changing the way that our world is working. And it's all about digitization. So we're talking about that in a moment. So a lot going on there. Next thing, of course, is not only do you get to enjoy this great show and learn, but we also can offer you CPE credits. So if you want CPE credits, whether it's from Worldwide ERC, many thanks to our friends there, or if it's from HRCI or SHRM, and many thanks to our friends at Rocket Mortgage who have helped us get those credits, then they're up there. I'll leave them up there for a moment. But if you do want to take your credits, and I suggest you get your phone out and take a quick snap of this, or take a screenshot, or just generally write it down the old-fashioned way. But these are the codes that you'll need if you want your credits. But there has been a lot of breaking news. I've talked about some of it already, but let's just see what has been going on in the wonderful world of global mobility in the last 7 days. So a huge amount of news going on there. Congratulations to those companies that have made acquisitions to deal with your acquisition of LegalPad. Many congratulations to all the new starters. Particular shout out to Mary Weaver, who I see is in the audience today, who's joined Benevo, and indeed to Keris Baines. I'm not sure if you're in the audience, but who's also joined Benevo, and to everybody else who started new jobs in the last few days. And also very exciting about EY putting their split to a partner vote. My guess is that will go through now. We might cover that in a later thing. And of course, many congratulations, as Rob Zeitz said, to all the Emma winners. And of course, I would point out that that Benevo won the award for Best Technology. That's our 12th award in 12 years. In our 12th award in the last few years. So anyway, without more ado, let's move on to immigration. We've got a lot to cover today. So let's bring on the one and only Julia Onslow Cole. Hey, Julia, how are you doing?
Very well, thanks. Yeah.
Okay. So, Julia, where in the world are we going this week?
Asia Pac. Asia Pac.
Okay. So, tell us what's been going on in Asia Pac.
Great. Thank you. So just wanted to say a big shout out to Mark Buchanan, who heads our Singapore office, and he's provided a lot of these briefings. But I did attend a lunch yesterday, a very interesting lunch with a lot of CEOs and also some global sort of thinkers. And there was a lot of discussion about China and America. And it's going to be really widely watched, this historic meeting in China on the 16th of October. It's the 20th National Congress. And it's a meeting of the Communist Party, and Xi Jinping, the president of China, will almost certainly obviously be re-elected. But people are thinking that this may be a marker when you will actually see less strident zero COVID policies. They think that up until then, probably is politically going to be kept in place, but we might see a change, but other people think perhaps not. But since in the last week, we've had a single lockdown in Beijing University. And although the quarantine is 7 days, which isn't very much, if you do get COVID before you come back to China, you can end up being outside for weeks.
So COVID certainly isn't over when we come to China.
No, or Hong Kong. So looking at Singapore, there's been masses in the papers, almost every day, news headlines about this new talent visa. Very interesting from a geopolitical perspective, because it really shows that the Singapore government feel there is a race for talent. And interesting because obviously they have a lot of talent in Singapore. A lot of people have come from Hong Kong to Singapore, but they still feel this need to have a talent visa. And the Ministry of Manpower that brought it in, he used to be the Minister for Trade and Industries. He's got quite a sort of business savvy background. But because there's been a bit of a backlash, if you read all the papers every day in Singapore, to say, what's going to happen to resident labour. So the government's saying, no, the fair consideration framework and Compass, which is this new system, the points-based system that's coming in from next September, that'll be there and it will protect resident labour, but they do want to have this new talent visa. The actual rules, we've got a few more glimpses of what the rules will be from last week, and they're quite dense. So you actually have to earn 30,000 Singapore dollars a month. And because our pound is falling so badly, that was about 15,000 sterling, and now it's about 17,000 sterling. So that's quite a lot a month. So that's only going to really take you to the sort of elite 5% of earners, unless you're in an outstanding position in the arts when those requirements will be dropped. And that's, if you earn that from one company, then you can do what you like as well. You can work for many different companies, but you have to earn all of that money from one company. So the other thing is, it's a 5-year visa, but there'll be stringent yearly checks. So quickly, a couple of words about Australia. it's announced, big announcement, opening its doors to permanent migrants, and they want to increase permanent migrants by 35% because they say they have extreme skilled labour shortages. So that's very interesting, and we'll get more of that in the coming weeks. Japan, they are said that they will be announcing some relaxations. They're very worried about the yen. It's really slid down. They're also worried about their GDP. And at the moment, if you want to visit Japan, you have to go as part of a tour package. And if you want to be a business visitor, you've got to get this certificate of registration to show that you're going to keep up with the health and safety rules. And in addition, you need a visa. So it takes weeks. I mean, in fact, we had an American client want to go to Japan, and it took several weeks to get the visa. So Japan is saying, look, we're worried about the economy. We're going to do a big breakthrough of these requirements. We might take away the visas, or at least have visa waivers back. So watch this space. Finally, just wanted to say something about Thailand. A really big news story is that they announced they're going to have a long-term resident visa. They said that this is for 10 years, and it's particularly going to be aimed at people who want to work in Thailand remotely. But although there's a huge amount of interest, the requirements are still quite sketchy, and we think they're quite stringent. You know, the requirements of what you'd have to earn to be able to take this up are very, very significant. So that's all, Brian.
Okay, so thank you so much, Julia, for that update. Oh, I should mention, I see some people commenting in the comments box. There's been some good stuff going on later on today. There's the Move for Hunger truck pull going on out on the West Coast. And I believe today there's also a Metro Atlanta Relocation Council conference going on the East Coast. So everybody attending those events, have a great day. And thank you so many of you being with us today. I see we've got nearly 200 people in the audience, which is just fantastic, everybody. So out in the audience, you know how it works. Hit the heart button, hit the like button, hit the applause button, and please say a big, big thank you to our regular Julia Onslow-Cole, and to welcome in our other regular, Pat Jurgens, as we move from immigration onto tax. Pat, welcome. I think it's been a while since the summer break, and I know that last week we congratulated Julia on becoming a grandmother.
Yes.
And I believe you've also got some news for us.
That's true. I have a third grandchild as of 6 weeks ago. His name is Cameron. So he is doing well, and his parents are getting a little bit of sleep, but everybody's doing fine.
Okay, well, a big shout out to Cameron, a mobility star of the future, no doubt. So, Pat, what are you going to be talking to us about today?
I'm going to discuss changes in the Netherlands 30% ruling and proposed exit tax in Finland. But first, a big shout out to my tax colleagues, Laura Pakarinen and Renee Offermans from IBFD Netherlands. They helped me put together this update, and I think Renee may actually be in the audience today.
Okay, well, let's talk. I mean, the 30% ruling's been around forever. So tell us about the changes.
Yes. So this spring, Netherlands announced plans to restrict the concession known as the 30% ruling. And this is still in the proposal stage, but it is expected to be effective as from 2024. So we still got a bit of time to figure out what this all means. So the 30% ruling, as it stands now, provides an exclusion of 30% of the wages from taxable income for qualifying inbound expatriate employees. So effectively, they're only paying tax on 70% of their wages. Beginning in 2024, the proposal would cap that salary that you can take the 30% ruling on. The annual cap is tied to government wages. For 2022, the amount is 216,000 euros, and this would be indexed for inflation annually. So any income that exceeds the cap would be taxable in full. No longer you get the 30% exclusion. So there'll be some transitional rules for those employees currently using the 30% ruling. Looks like it'll be phased in over a 3-year period for those who have had it in the past. And we're expecting more details when the Dutch budget is announced next week, September 20th, I believe. So, this change in the expat concession for the Netherlands, it's in line with some recent changes to expatriate tax concessions in neighboring countries, notably Belgium and France. And this will impact higher income expatriates, really, inbound to the Netherlands. Tax rate on income that goes over the cap was taxed at an effective rate of 34.65%. Now it's going up to the full top rate, which is 49.5%. So mobility managers may want to think about what that impact will be to their budgets going in from 2024. Next up is the proposed exit tax in Finland. Last month, the Finnish government proposed to assess an exit tax for wealthy individuals. And the intent was to prevent immigration-related tax evasion, where individuals would move outside of Finland and move to low tax or no tax locations that are on capital gains, Switzerland being one of them, and then saving tax just by moving, essentially.
So this is basically people leaving Finland.
Yes.
So,
right.
Excuse me for this. So this is effectively a Finnish.
Finish. Yeah, that might be a way to put it. So the proposed rules would be effective only from 2023. So there isn't much time to figure out what this means. Qualifying individuals that depart Finland permanently would be taxed on the appreciated values of their financial assets as capital gains, even if they're not sold. So it's a deemed disposition. You can defer the tax if you like, but this would be on investment properties such as company shares, investment funds, options, insurance contracts, and virtual currencies. So those wealthy folks are qualified if they have investment assets over 500,000 euros, and those contain at least 100,000 euros of capital gain or appreciated value. So the deemed disposition would occur the day before they leave Finland. So that would hit, those capital gains would be hit with a 30 to 34% range capital gains tax. And you can defer when you pay it until you sell it. The window is 8 years. So if you held on to the shares or the investment assets for 8 years after you've left Finland, then you no longer are subject to this exit tax. So they've just finished the comment period on these proposed rules that came in on Monday, and only a few public comments were submitted, amazingly enough. And guess what? Every one of them was opposed to the new proposed exit tax. So we'll see whether there'll be any delay in the implementation date or whether there'll be any limiting of the scope of the exit tax. So,
okay, so this is getting silly. But so what we've got is a consultation period which has just ended.
Yes.
So we've just seen the finish to the finish.
Yes, exactly.
This is getting a bit too silly. Who'd have thought tax could be so much fun?
Yeah.
Okay. So Pat, thank you for all your help and your update today.
Yep.
So everybody, you know how this works. Okay, we're going to say goodbye to Pat, and we're going to bring on our show producer Tally. So everybody, hit the heart button, hit the like button, hit the applause button. I want to see the screen light up as we say goodbye to Pat, and we bring onto stage Tally to tell us about what has been going on in her world over the last few days. So Tally, what news have you got for us?
Hi, Brian. Yeah, such exciting news today. You already mentioned it, but if anyone missed it, Benivo just raised $12 million from Updata Partners, and we're so proud. And that brings the total amount invested in us to $30 million. And with this new investment, we're of course planning to expand our wonderful end-to-end solution and to continue to add exciting features for our client. And as always, it's free of extra charge. But first and foremost, we want to grow our teams, both in the US, in the UK, Armenia, India. So I want to take this opportunity to, again, invite anyone who would like to be part of this growth to join us by going to this link here or by approaching any one of us. We have plenty of roles. I just mentioned some of the roles here. And the three most urgent ones, I'll just, the three most urgent ones are the 2 client success managers that are based in the US. We're looking for a data scientist in the UK, and the client advisor that is also based in the US. So if any one of you know one, please let us know. So this is really one more thing that I wanted to share just before I'm leaving is, oh, okay, that probably won't be shared. Yeah, okay. So I wanted to share this, and it's my computer giving us trouble again.
No, your screen's not working. Let's go out.
Yes. We're gonna have to go back to that some other time. But yeah, just wanted to share this wonderful photo taken in Singapore and congratulate Benevo for the 12th award, the EoR award. And I think this is a finish.
This is another finish. But what we're going to do now is we're going to be bringing in our special guest. We're going to be talking about Deel and the whole EoR revolution. I have to tell you that when we discuss this, we've got a wonderful group of change makers, and they are so passionate about understanding everything to do with EoR, both the upside and also some of the challenges. But there's real focus on what's going on with EoR. So without further ado, I'm going to bring them on. So let's say a big thank you to Tally. But as we bring on, we've got Casey Bailey from Deel, the head of people there, and we've got Steve Malley and Steve Hoffman from the strategic partnership side. So everybody, hit the heart button, hit the like button, hit the applause button, and let's welcome onto the show all the exciting, wonderful people who are joining us from Deel. So you're here, the Deel makers. It's great to see you guys on the show. I mean, I am so excited to hear all about Deel. So first of all, just tell us a bit about yourselves. I'll start with you, Casey. How did you get into this industry?
I was born into it. My entire family almost is in employment law or the HR field. So I've been in the industry for about 20 years. It's been the first part of my career as an HR and benefits consultant. So seeing a variety, I think like Steve Malley mentioned, of utilizing things such as employer of record to hiring directly and establishing entities around the world in both a US focused workforce as well as a global workforce, but have recently I started at Deel last December as they were growing out their internal workforce and had really started seeing product to market hit, customer growth exploding, and internal hiring happening. So hiring about 100 people per month. So no small feat that I've joined to accomplish here.
We're going to get back onto that. 100 people per month. Now, I mean, that's 3 per day, and that's assuming that you're working Saturdays and Sundays.
Yes.
Like, this is just, we'll get into that, but that is just beyond crazy. I mean, that's just, I mean, the rate of growth is just incredible. But Steve, I mean, Steve M, I'm going to have to be careful here. Steve M, so you've been in the EoR industry for quite a while, haven't you? So tell us a bit about your background.
Yeah, Brian, first and foremost, what an introduction. That was really something. Just a real pleasure to be a part of the call today. Yeah, this is actually my third stop in EoR. So I am really privileged to have spent the good portion of my career supporting, companies' growth and around human capital. And the last 7 of it have been mostly focused in international expansion. So really excited to see what the industry's done and how it's empowering companies to look at talent in different places and how it's really changing the way we think about work and remote work with that.
Okay, and Steve H., I mean, you've come into this from a mobility background, so tell us a bit about your journey.
Well, it's really great to see Pat Juergens, first of all, on this, because he's the very first person I met in global mobility about 11 years ago. So it's nice to see that he's also part of this. But interestingly enough, I was in the financial services business selling retirement plans that offer guarantees against market volatility. And so as you can imagine, as the market got more volatile, especially in 2008 and 2009, they got rid of that. And so I gradually found myself looking for a new industry. And I found myself starting off selling international pension plans in 2011. Then I graduated to expatriate employee benefit plans. And then, of course, global mobility tax, and then now Deel.
Okay, so let me start off I'm just going to tell people a bit about the Deel story as I understand it, and we'll come on to some of that. But let me just throw up a couple of stats, which to me are they just blow my mind thinking about it. I mean, as I understand it, and correct me if I'm wrong here, you are the fastest growing software company in history. And to give us an idea of that, you went from pretty much from a standing start to $100 million annual recurring revenue in just 20 months. I mean, that is just, it's beyond mind blowing. It's crazy. And I'll throw up a couple of other stats that we've got here. You've got 9,000. I'm sure by the time this call has ended, there'll be another couple of hundred coming in there. You've got 9,000 customers in over 150 countries. And this is the one I love the best, is you've got 1,400 employees. Those are your own employees, what I call real deal, as opposed to your EoR or your contractors, which is probably another, correct me if I'm wrong, but it's going to be over 100,000, isn't it? So you've got all that. But not only that, you've got no offices. So here we are, we've got a company that's valued at billions, that has raised just a shed load of funding, that has got 9,000 customers, you're in 150 countries, 1,400 employees, and you've got no real estate. I mean, this is just, Casey, I'm going to start with you. You're the head of people. How are you doing this? I mean, it's just bonkers. How are you doing it?
It's quite complex, and we must be very intentional to accomplish it. It's as if our founders, Shuo and Alex, saw the future, right? And starting out at Y Combinator in the US and San Francisco, wanting to solve a financial payments issue really at the beginning for immigrants to be able to work for the best companies all around the world. And so it's really at the heart and soul of who we are at Deel, to truly be able to hire the best talent for Deel, independent of where they sit around the world. Same as the things that we allow to hire, manage, and pay people around the world for our customers. We're living that same dream every day internally, which has really ramped our ability to be able to hire quickly. As you mentioned, hiring on average 100 people per month and moving at that type of speed. So many people looking for, how do I work for a company that's maybe not necessarily in the same country as I am? And that seems complex, both from that user or human perspective, as well as from the perspective of the company that we're trying to solve. And we're trying to connect those two people through technology. So we manage a lot through our technology and creating connections for people internally and thinking about managing through that hyper growth. Of course, we're scaling ourselves internally as we're scaling the business externally. So if you think about it from a team member point of view, they're dealing with not only maybe onboarding or hiring and managing the culture and performance of people and dealing with things coming in from customers and enhancing our product, but also thinking about, okay, how do we make sure that we're continuing to build Deel in a way that is really solving for the future of work and those global problems that we all, share in together and can learn from each other as a community.
Okay, so we're going to get into what Deel actually does in a moment and what EORs do and about that. I'm just still, fascinated by this hyper. Which of the three of you is the old timer? I mean, which of you was the first to join Deel?
I suppose that would be me.
Okay, so Mr. Hoffman, I have to, two Steves makes it tricky. Okay, so Steve A, tell me, you joined how long ago, and how many people have joined since you joined? I mean, I'm just trying to get my head around the speed of growth here.
Yeah, it's quite remarkable, and I just want to point out it's amazing that we're so diverse and so spread out and so motivated to work. So you think about people working from home and like how can you engage them? Like I've never been let down by a colleague. Well, I wouldn't say never, but yet it's just amazing that that we're all so synergistic and working hard for a common goal. But so I started as employee number roughly 150. During that time, I started with about 10 other people, so it's hard to say if I was 145 or 160, somewhere in that time frame. And so now,
okay, so we'll give you 150. So you can be employee number 150, and we're now on employee number 1400.
North of that, yeah,
or more. Okay, let's call it 1500. Around, it probably is. I appreciate, Casey, that you're giving us your time here, but I suspect there's probably about 20 people waiting to be employed whilst you're chatting for the next 60 minutes. But so let's just say we've gone from 150 to 1500. So your employee numbers have grown by tenfold. And how long ago was it you joined, Steve?
May of last year. So it's been about 16 months, I guess.
Okay, so the company has grown 10 times in 16 months in terms of headcount numbers. I mean, this is just, this is like Latin American hyperinflation put into a corporate environment. I mean, it's just amazing. But so Casey, how do you build a culture? How do you create a Deel culture when you've got, every joining you every second of the day?
Yeah, I mean, I think it all stems from philosophically the way that Sho and Alex think about engaging people in a remote place, right? They very intentionally established Deel without an office because that was their vision and really being able to have people engage from anywhere. But to do that, we have to build the technology offerings. We acquired a company last year called Roots Technology. I guess it closed technically in December or January of this year. We've really been leveraging Roots Technology to be able to integrate into our own platform, but also to bring data to life as well as engagement and communication. So for example, we have a tool called Connections by Roots. You can build an algorithm in the background to say, okay, who are the people that you work with cross-functionally or adjacently to on a daily basis? And we can build an algorithm to connect you and service up, kind of like Donut for Slack. This is a Slack plugin as well, to serve up those people specifically to you so that you can meet them and connect. But also, if you think about the things that are missing, you hear people talk about water cooler moments if you're in a fully remote environment. And are we missing those moments from a social aspect? Well, we can also serve up to you connections through Roots that are people that you wouldn't otherwise meet. They're not in your team. They're not in an adjacent workspace or cross-functional team to you. And how do you connect with those people? And what we've seen then is that leads to people establishing not technically what I would consider a traditional usage of employer resource groups or ERGs, but rather Slack groups and building their own communities. If you think about being in a hyper-growth startup, where your typical environment where it started out, I would say 20 months ago or even earlier, right, as a workforce that didn't necessarily have families or children. And now we're kind of evolving, right, where people are having families and building families. So Deel's Dash Families is actually kind of our biggest Slack channel outside of work channels of people building their own communities to be able to connect, interface. They have family play dates where they get on Slack or on Zoom and have meetings. So we've seen that connectivity build. I also think it's just inherently come as natural because people are so connected to the vision and mission at Deel and being nomadic, being able to work from anywhere. I think another thing that you hear sometimes is, people going on workcations or not taking time off. It's kind of like a normal. It's not even a workcation here. It's people are naturally moving around or working from other locations and bringing their families with them. And you'll see us in a host of different backgrounds and environments. And it's kind of gone viral within our company on Slack. I think they're trying to push it to social media, like which volcano are you working from this week? Or what are you doing over here? So there's a big, just natural community of involvement on that social side. I think that comes through those connections and how people like to work and what they're trying to accomplish with working at Deel.
Yeah,
I'd love to add to that if I can, Brian. I think, one of the things that's really interesting, I saw somebody in the comments post upstate New York, right? We're not known in Rochester, New York for being the high-tech capital of the world, right? So being able to engage people in parts of the country where businesses like Deel don't typically operate is really a really interesting part of what Deel has put together here. And, there's also, something that was very contagious early on. It's one of our catchphrases is Deel speed. So being able to not put off for tomorrow what you can accomplish today and acting with intent behind our decision making is really like part of our core DNA. So being able to tie that into, the philosophy of this is why, we're going to be successful. We're just simply going to outwork our competitors, right? And we're going to put ourselves in a spot where we solve for these challenges today as opposed to putting them off for tomorrow.
Okay, comment coming in here from Rob Zeitz from Airing. Remote work can be an opportunity to foster more diverse connections within a company where people who normally wouldn't interact in a physical office for a variety of reasons get a chance to interact virtually. Yeah, I mean, we talk about, the loss of the water cooler moment, but it can go the other way. And John Lee from Work From Anywhere says, I'm probably a bit biased, but the trend to remote work doesn't seem to be slowing down. Actually, let me just ask a question of the audience, and we'll carry on the discussion whilst the answers come in. And the question for the audience is this: have you, or if you're a supplier, your clients, ever used an EoR company for remote workers? And I'll give you three choices. You can either say, yes, regularly, we've used them once or twice, or no, never used. So I'd be interested in your views. So in the audience, give us your answer. I'll leave this up for a couple of moments. But if in the audience, you can tell us what's your experience. Have you ever actually used an EoR yourself, either directly or have your clients ever used one? Yes, regularly, once or twice, or i.e. infrequently, or never. So we'll leave that up as a question. But once that's up there, I'm going to start. Maybe I'll start with you, Steve M, on this. For those people who don't know, let's just go back to basics. What is an EoR? Just tell us what the concept is so we get everybody up to speed as a starting point.
Sure. EoR stands for Employer of Record. And what it means is effectively where you don't have an operational entity to employ your own people, you can partner with or work through an employer of record to basically meet all the compliance requirements to be that end employer wherever that talent is located. People most familiar with the space will have heard the utilization of the term PEO, which is a professional employer organization, which is most commonly found in North America. Legacy providers in the space that have been there forever, providing PEO co-employment services. So international PEO is actually a little bit of a misnomer, but employer of record is how we deliver our services today.
Okay, I mean, we actually asked that question on a LinkedIn poll, and I'll tell you what LinkedIn said. They said 32% said they'd used EoR regularly, 28% said once or twice, and 40% said never. So in other words, 60% of our survey poll said that they'd used an EoR at least once or twice. But I mean, so it's big out there. But I mean, let's just talk a bit about it. When should you? Maybe I'll address this one to you, Steve H. When should you use an EoR?
Well, that's a loaded question. There's a lot of, it's very broad. So when should you use it? It's, the easiest answer is remote workers in other countries where you don't have an employing entity. So if you want to hire, customer service professionals, admin support, that's easy. Tech support, software engineers, we get that all the time. The only thing you need to be wary of is, what level they are in that organization. Are they the C-level? Well, that's a concern. We probably don't want to go that route due to some risks associated with permanent establishment. And at this time, I think you want to put that ticker down at the bottom saying that we're not giving legal advice or tax advice. We're not attorneys or accountants here.
Okay, we'll take those different. Okay, this is a chat. We're just talking between friends. Don't worry. This isn't.
Okay. Oh, yeah.
This isn't going on the internet or anything. It's just a couple of chums talking. So say this is no. But in all seriousness, yeah. There's no tax or legal advice being given here. Actually, that goes to what Pat and Julia says as well. We're taking no liability for this. But anyway,
also,
we're amongst chums. So just tell us. So what you're basically saying is that you've got to be a bit cautious with very senior people, and there can be a PE risk for the most senior people. Just give us a bit more, Steve, a bit more on, where the problems might arise with very senior people.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I think, there's a lot of really great use cases for deploying employer of record, right? And the most of them are centered around, quick to market, mitigated risk, right? And compliance, where you would have maybe historically engaged in a more of a non-compliant manner. So EoR levels the playing field from that perspective. When you get into certain roles, right, where we look at like contract reconciliation or conclusions, if we're looking at revenue generating roles, again, more senior roles where it'd be really hard to say, hey, they don't have oversight into the company. That tends to get on the fringe of whether or not you should be looking at setting up your own entity. And that's where, again, the intention behind employer of record is, let's engage with people quickly and compliantly and assess the marketplace as to whether or not it's the right place for you to operate fully. And then we can tell part of Deel's solution is helping you get through that initial integration from either a contract or an employer of record onto your own standalone entity with a payroll solution behind it.
Okay, we're getting some great questions coming in. I'll just take this one from John Lee to start with. He says, great point, Steve. I'm not sure which Steve he's talking about. I think that's Steve H he was talking about at that point. But anyway, both Steves and DKC, great points. We'll put that to all of you. But he goes on to say, I'm curious, how should companies assess the various employers of record? What are the differences? So obviously we're not going to diss the competition, but just give us an idea here. What are the different models, and how should you assess, how you should choose an EoR, or indeed not, and go for an alternative solution?
Yeah, sure. So actually, Peak Matrix just released a study on this, which releases and highlights the industry leaders. Like I said, this is the onset of the call. This is my third stop in EoR, so I've been really in a fortunate spot to see the industry be disrupted, not once, but actually twice. So when you assess it, you need to think really more so about what your needs are as a business, and what your employees look like internationally. Are they tech savvy? Do they want to feel integrated into a platform? Are they okay with communications about their specific employment details happening via email, right? So there's a lot of different things that you need to look into, and all of the competition that's come up, especially the competition that's come up in the last few years. They do great things for this industry at large. It's great to see kind of the showcase of the space, because it just means that it's going to continue to be something that's a really strategic part of business's overall strategy for years to come. So yeah, I think you want to look at, kind of those things, as they really specifically relate to your company's individual strategy around how you engage with people. And then ultimately what your broader plans are for leveraging, an employer of record model internationally. I can say that from our standpoint, we walk people through contractor into end-to-end life cycle all on one platform, which is for some people in the HR people talent space is a really nice advantage. And so those are some of the things that Deel does exceptionally well. But there are a lot of really amazing companies in this space that have done really cool things, and we're excited to see the continued investment in the space.
Okay, I'll take a couple more questions. Here's one from Men. I'll address this to you, Steve. And I know there's another comment you want to make, so please sort of pull the two together. She said in the Middle East and Asia, they're using them for immigration purposes. Is that an area that Deel is in? And tell us a bit about that.
Yeah, it is. It is a huge area of expansion for us. We are seeing a large uptick in work visa requests with our EoR employees. And that is something that we're investing a lot in. You announced earlier that we purchased LegalPad, so we're making great strides in that to have all of our locations, all of our entities have the ability to sponsor work visas. So we're building out that process now. This is one of those things that doesn't work at probably the Deel speed we would like, because there's so much bureaucracy and processes in place. But to put it this way, we didn't have any mobility staff this time last year. Now we have about 10. We'll probably have another 5 to 10 before the end of the year. And that uptick that we're seeing in requests is a combination of obviously the restrictions being lifted on the pandemic, as well as people saying, oh, you know what? I want to send somebody on assignment somewhere and there's no employing entity. How do I do that? Well, that's something we're doing and we're building out, and it's exciting to see what we're doing. And
so that might be the case, for example, where you're going into a new country, maybe because you want to build out a sales operation there, or maybe the other way, you want to build a call center, but you're going out and you're sending your first few people out there. So is there a point when you go out there and you sort of start it and then you switch it at some point to a local entity? Is that how it typically works in those cases?
That's exactly the point I wanted to make when you asked me that first question, where should you use EoR? It's a great way to test out a new market without investing on establishing an entity. You take a country like France, you establish an entity there, the people you hire, you're going to have to pay pensions to them for the rest of their lives. You're going to do so much, and it's really hard to, separate yourself if it doesn't work out. So it's a huge liability. So, employer of record is a great opportunity to test out new markets, make sure it works before you do invest in actually establishing that entity.
Yeah, don't miss a French meal voucher. That's for sure.
Yeah. And
question coming in from William Zaleski, and maybe I'll address this one to you, Steve M. How does an EoR provide the similar levels of benefits? Presumably, he says similar, he means similar to the host, the client company, such as equity and retirement benefits. So how does it work? And I know when we discussed this in our change makers, salaries were quite easy, but benefits and stock were the ones that was exercising their mind. So tell us a bit about how EoRs work with benefits and retirement benefits and equity.
Yeah, phenomenal question. Thanks for this. So let me break it into 3 pieces then. So what we find with EoR, right, is that every country has most countries have socialized healthcare, right? So there's statutory benefits that are offered in these markets, which employees are used to enjoying, right? They're kind of the standard tricks of the trade, right? Very different than the U.S. market, where we're talking about individualized healthcare plans on a group level. So how EoRs handle these things are we look at, obviously, buckets of money almost. Like the payroll is always going to be your payroll. Your statutory requirements are always going to be your statutory requirements. And then it's incumbent upon companies like Deel to constantly be looking at ways to enhance our offerings so that, companies that want to offer a more robust offering have the ability to do that, right? One of the ways I was fortunate enough, to see and be part of a process over the last few months here at Deel that took a really close look at what we were doing in terms of our international multinational benefit offering, and to gear that towards the specific needs of certain countries over another. And so that's a great barometer for EoRs today, is what are you doing to reinvest back into kind of the talent that we're bringing to you, right, to make sure that we can offer a similar experience to that of the U.S. staff. And equity and retirement benefits are always a tricky one. It's one that we're constantly looking to improve upon. There are ways that we handle these today that will maybe change as the industry changes with this. But yeah, it's really incumbent upon the EoR to offer an option, more or less an options matrix to cover the needs of, kind of more of an entry level employee to, as we bleed into that more senior level, you want to be able to offer more. It may not be able to be just, straight compensation. They may be accustomed to additional perks and benefits. So yeah, that's something that we're addressing day in, day out.
Cool. And I suppose one of the benefits is, let's say someone going into the US for the first time, where it's a non-US company, they don't have an operation there. Then by coming in, they can take benefit of your buying power to get a benefit plan, which if they were coming in individually, they could. We're getting a ton of questions coming in, so I'll move quite quickly on, and I'll address this one to you, if I may, Casey. And this is from Malley, and she says, is the employee actually resigning to become an employee of the EoR? So I'm guessing this is the case where you're actually moving a mobile employee. So they were based in the domestic in the host country, they're going to a new location where there's no, so presumably that's what's happened. They resign from, X company and become a Deel employee. Is that how it works?
It is at the basic level, right? There's other complexities to that, but our support and success team deal with this on a daily basis. And we even deal with it internally. If you think about it from a people perspective, even if you had your own internal entity, there are going to be contractual employment agreement or offer letter changes that have to be made, because the matrix or the workflows, whether it's using an EoR or whether it's yourself, like I said, internally, is what is the employment status of that person and what is their location, their country of residence? Because you should be updating, even if you're managing your own internally, the changing of those contracts and terms based upon that country of residence, and then also offering the applicable requirements on your statutory benefits, as Steve was mentioning, et cetera. So it is, if you think about mobility, like for ourselves internally, we define global mobility as a change in your country of residence, right? And then what comes from that, what stems from that change. So it's exactly the same here as you think about moving as a customer and moving to a vendor to use an EoR.
So do they tend to lose their service rights? So for example, if somebody had, for sake of argument, 10 years service with their previous company and then they move to an EoR because they're doing it in a new location, or do companies tend to sort of say they guarantee it, that irrespective of the fact that they treat them as if?
Yeah, I love that question, because it's almost like the same as you would see in an acquisition or something like that if your company was acquired, right? Like, how do you maintain that service history? And that means that you're being really intentional with your people program. So I love that that's a question for people thinking about that. That all depends on the company, right? Their decisions that they're going to make. If I was doing it, yes, absolutely. I'd want to maintain that service record. We just acquired a company, LegalPad. We're maintaining their original service date and that service history, so we can tie things like performance management or any type of bonuses or things that we want to process that we still have control over, even if those people are sitting in an EoR, to have those things processed through the EoR within our policies and procedures to make sure that we're not treating those folks like second class team members, right? That we're maintaining parity. So there is some flexibility to do that. And again, would be my recommendation. That would be in your HRIS or your broader HR tech stack, likely where you're maintaining that record.
Got it. And another question that's coming in, I'm sure the answer to this one is yes, but I'll address it to Steve H., which is an assessment made regarding the country where the employee will be located and potential limitations to the usage of the EoR? I'm guessing that your lawyers crawl all over this and your tax people crawl all over it to make sure that it works. But tell me the answer is yes. You make an assessment regarding the country that you're moving people to.
Is an assessment regarding the country where employees look. I'm not sure I'm understanding the question. Is an assessment, is this Deel?
I think what they're saying is, before you send somebody to a country, do you make an assessment as to whether it will work in that country?
Well, yeah.
I know you've got a big legal team that looks at it. So another question coming in from Karen Hale. She says, this is a very interesting question. Are individuals on the employer of record considered employees or contractors under employment law? Hearing conflicting thoughts on this.
Well, that one I can answer. Contractors are contractors, and EoR employees are employees.
Right. Okay. So if they come across as employees and they're your employees, then they are.
We actually have a really interesting solution to this. That's probably our fastest growing market segment right now. It's contractor of record, right? So we actually have technology that assesses whether or not there should be any misclassification risk around contractor versus employer of record. This has been a tale as old as time, right? So Karen, really appreciate your question. But one of the main draws to the solution is having some peace of mind, knowing that, hey, somebody else who is an expert in the space has assessed my employee's contract and deemed that it is compliant to be delivered as a contractor. And I can also then elect to pay a little bit more to make sure that this third-party Deel owns the outcomes there if there's ever a question of misclassification. So yeah, this comes up a lot. That's one of the reasons why you're seeing providers in this space draw the line and say, we have solutions for both. Deel was built for contractors, but has expanded very rapidly into the employer record space, and contractor of record is one of our fastest growing segments.
Okay, well, I mean, as I said, your growth is just mind-boggling. Another question that's come in here and let's look at this one. In terms of employment, to what extent is the employer of record, is it engaged with the employee's day-to-day operations? How about things like duty of care? Maybe Casey, if you take that one. I mean, to what extent are you sort of stepping in from the client's perspective with the management? To what extent is the client doing the management? And and what about things like duty of care?
Sure. So it's definitely a partnership, I would say, in heavy involvement on both sides. If you think about things like the onboarding process and the offboarding process. So if you're terminating someone, obviously there's a lot of management and making sure that we're being compliant within a country. We understood what the employment policies were on the client side to understand what our policies were as being the employer of record and how we recommend managing through this. So that's a segment where we spend a lot of time and have a massive legal team and HR experience team working directly with the customer and partnering through that, because it is a partnership. In the actual day-to-day operations, we want to make sure that all of the standards of employment in a specific country are being met. So if there was a red flag as to something that a customer wasn't doing, for example, then we're going to flag that. And that would need to be a conversation if we can continue in that relationship, if that duty of care is not being met. So that would be something that we would take very seriously, because as Steve mentioned, in many cases, we're taking on the full liability, right, for that person being within our EOR, with us being the employer of record. And so wanting to make sure there's a human at the end of everything that we do, right? A human that is not getting a contract, not starting work on time, or starting work, or changing employers, or getting paid or not getting paid, being terminated and communicated with appropriately. So we take that all very seriously. And that is something, to your earlier question, or someone's earlier question about what do you look for in a partner or a vendor when you're looking at this type of situation? Yes, it's all the compliance stuff for sure. And yes, it's my strategy on hiring or going into a country. But I would also say, from the HR person, right, that it's also around not just the CFO or legal asking those things. It's also about what is that standard going to be in terms of communications, how you're treating this employee that we share together and that we're managing, together, and what are the things going to look like in your workflows and processes to make sure we have a great end result, no matter what's happening with that individual.
Okay, and we've got time for one last question on the understanding, Steve, that you give us a 90-second answer only. To a very hard question. So let's look at this is from our resident tax guru, Pat. How does an EoR get around corporate tax risk, PE, etc., acknowledging you aren't providing tax advice? So tell us a bit about some of the issues regarding PE in 90 seconds.
Yeah, so 90-second overview on PE. Understanding the roles that make the most sense to be hired under an EoR, and understanding the strategy will help you circumnavigate PE risk, right? It's something we have to deal with every single day, right? Our job, our team, is to work as a strategic partner team to find opportunities for our direct sales team, right? So every day we get requests that are kind of like, what I jokingly call a nuclear submarine, right? And we remind people, hey, look, we aren't in the business of building nuclear submarines. This is a PE risk. You need to talk to this company. Fortunately, Deel has an amazing ecosystem of partners that can handle questions like this really well. And so we typically will point them in that direction. It really just comes down to the role specifically, and how that's probably the best way to manage those things. And then obviously, as I think have all touched on, right, having a really good working communication with your partner in this space, whichever company you choose to use, allows for more confidence around not making mistakes around these things. And that's one of the things that we do a really nice job of, is making sure that our teams are connected there to that very well.
I must admit, one of the things that has impressed me about Deel in particular is having spoken to companies that use your services. I am aware of situations where they were trying to put somebody on a Deel contract, on an EoR contract, who was very, very senior, for example, a chief technology officer or chief commercial officer, very senior positions. And actually, the response from Deel has been, be very, very careful, because, these are not terms that, that are helpful in terms of PE risk. So, the Deel people, and I'm guessing it's in your culture, do seem to be quite conservative and prudent in terms of not pushing the envelope too far. Would that be a correct way to sum up?
Great way to sum it up, Brian. Yeah, absolutely. And then it's exactly, part of the core philosophy, what's I think made us successful is understanding what we're good at. We know how to play to our strengths, and where it's an area where we can recommend that they look at another opportunity or option. That's the reason why we'll continue to build onto our platform to always solve all of the cross-border human capital challenges our clients face.
Okay, well, let me bring our colleagues back on, Pat and Julia and Tally, and the team is all back. And all that really remains is for me to thank all of you. Thank you to Pat and Julia as ever. Thank you to our special guests, Casey Bailey and the two Steves, Hoffman and Malley, for giving us the insight. And just congratulations to everybody at Deel. It's just extraordinary what you guys have achieved, and all credit to you. We are back next week with a very special show, a special episode of Believer Bites, when we're talking about the mobility gold rush, and in particular we will have a private equity investor from Updata Partners, Braden Snyder, who'll be talking to us about why private equity is so interested in mobility at the moment and where that is going to take us. It's a fascinating area. It's been great talking to everybody, and all that really remains is for me to say goodbye to our audience and see you all next week. Take care, everybody, and goodbye.
Bye.